In today's video, we're jumping back to our NHL offseason plan series. We're now looking at the 8th ranked team from the regular season, the Colorado Avalanche. They've won the Stanley Cup a couple years back, and they've been able to get into the playoffs ever since, but now they're faced with some really difficult salary cap situations. How will they navigate it? What will the team look like this fall? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're taking a look at the Colorado Avalanche and setting our expectations for what we're likely going to see from them this offseason. The Avalanche are a unique team that they have some pretty complicated salary cap situations to navigate. Like I said, they're not far removed from being a Stanley Cup champion. The last couple of years, they've been able to get into the playoffs and had a hard time getting past the first or second round. I know this team is anxious to try to win again with the core group they have, but how can they do that? Let's take a look first at how 23-24 went. We'll examine some key team and individual performances. Then we'll examine their salary cap situation, what contracts are expiring, and then we'll examine what they need to do to try to get this team back to being contenders again next year. What are the top questions they need to answer to make those accomplishments? So let's recap last year, take a look at the 23-24 season results. So, of course, we know they once again made the playoffs, had another excellent season in the Central Division, finished with 107 points in the regular season with a record of 50, 25, and 7. They ended up losing in round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs to the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, the Dallas Stars. Dallas, of course, went on to lose, of course, to the Edmonton Oilers in the next round. But ultimately, they put up a really good fight against the Avalanche and came out victorious. So the Avs, again, a really good team, but they had some unique circumstances, I think, that certainly impacted things for sure. Goals for, they scored 302 goals last year, the absolute best in the league. You don't really need to improve that. The top scoring team as it is. Goals against, 252 for 17th best. Wouldn't hurt if that was cut down a little bit. Power play, again, top 5 in the league, number 5 at 24.5%. You can't expect a whole lot more than that. And the penalty killing was respectable. I mean, it was 12th in the league at 79.9. Not elite, but still really good. Obviously, to be 12th in the league and 5th in the league in your special teams means you had a really good campaign. Taking a look at their top individual performances, of course, led by the phenomenal year of Nathan MacKinnon, who I fully suspect will most likely win the Hart Trophy. We'll find out here in not too distant future. But of course, Big Mac put up 51 goals and 140 points. Like, what a season for MacKinnon. Absolutely eliteness, and at times was the best player in the world. Of course, right now in the Stanley Cup playoffs, I think McDavid has taken that title back, but those two, along with Nikita Kucherov, certainly all deserve that, you could say, recognition for the seasons that they had this year. Of course, behind MacKinnon is fellow line mate Mikko Rantanen. Rantanen, again, a 100-point campaign, 104 points. Another real big year for him. Cale Makar, 90 points, and he missed a little bit of time as well, or he may have had a shot at 100 points as well. Then there's a big drop-off from those top 3 down to Casey Middlestat, who was still a nice pickup this year, 57 points. And Jonathan Drouin, if there was an award for Comeback Player of the Year, he very well might be it, 56 points. Then you got Big Val Nichushkin, who was a story all on his own, 53 points in 54 games, so pretty much a point-per-game player. Problem is he wasn't there enough this year and certainly ran into some issues. Of course, Alexander Georgiev between the pipes was okay. Was decent in the playoffs. Not a great regular season. I know he's their guy, but not exactly the numbers you want. He had a record of 38, 18, and 5. That part wasn't too bad. Obviously, the Avalanche could score their way out of trouble a lot, but a 302 goals against and an 897 save percentage. You can't expect a sub-900 save percentage to have, to take you deep. And that might have been one of their Achilles heels, along with the Nichushkin situation. Now, looking at the in-season changes that this team faced, well, unfortunately, a big part of Val Nichushkin impacted this team so big. Obviously losing him in the playoffs was massive. I mean, they lost him for part of the regular season as well. But when they're losing him in the regular season, at least they weren't blindsided. They didn't, they've seen it coming. Obviously when you're dealing with injuries or when a player's going into the player assistance program willingly, that's a different scenario. But then in the playoffs, they lose him after a failed drug test. Essentially, he's forced into the next level of the player assistance program, 6-month suspension, and they found this out like on the eve of a big important playoff game. And I think it just kind of sucked the life out of the team. Not only is he not with them on the ice, you could tell when they went to play that night that the team wasn't themselves. I think their combination of worried for their brother and their teammate, but also frustrated and upset that he, messed up and he's not there now to help them, right? So it's a wide range of emotions. Of course, throughout the year, they had also lost Samuel Girard for a while to the player assistance program. He came back and seemed to be doing much better, which was good to see. As far as other changes throughout the season, early in the campaign, very early October, they traded for Caleb Jones. They had signed Tomas Tatar as a free agent in the offseason, and clearly it was early in the year that it was apparent that wasn't working out. They were able to ship him off to the Seattle Kraken. Then they traded Curtis McDermott to New Jersey for a 7th rounder just to do McDermott a favor, get him some playing time, because he was basically considered a spare part really in the Avalanche organization. And of course, they pulled off the significant trade, getting Sean Walker, while at the same time in that trade, moving on from Ryan Johansson, who also was in his first year as an Avalanche and wasn't really working out. They wanted to upgrade that number 2 center spot, and at the same time getting themselves a pretty solid right-handed D. So they did that. Then, of course, they pulled off the big trade with Byram for Middlestat. I mean, that was a pretty significant deal. I mean, Bo Byram is a big part of that blue line, but they have a deep blue line with a lot of great skating offensive defensemen. When you have Makar and Taves and Girard, they felt like it was expendable. I mean, not that they don't like Byram. They really, really appreciated his game, but they really needed a forward upgrade. So you have to give value to get value. And then on top of that, they picked up Yakov Trenin and Brandon Duhaime at the deadline. So this team certainly made lots of effort. They went and got Middlestat, Duhaime, Trenin at the deadline, Walker. They were able to move on from Johansson. Unfortunately, they lose Nichushkin at a very key time in the playoffs, which just played a big role. Georgiev had a rough start to the playoffs, but then settled in, and he was better than he was in the regular season. I'll give him credit there. So overall, lots to like in some unfortunate stuff. They still were not able to get Gabriel Landeskog in the lineup at all this year. Of course, he did have a press conference at the end of the year when GM Chris McFarland was speaking. He was there with them and did confirm he's not retiring. He's going to continue rehabbing, and I can't say with certainty that he's going to play next year, but he's hopeful and trying, and they're still moving forward with that, being something that's the goal. He couldn't guarantee he'd make it to training camp. Couldn't guarantee he'd be there on day 1 of the season, but his goal is to play next year. Not retiring. So we'll see how things go. I mean, at this point, he still has all summer to rehab. So by the time training camp rolls around, we'll have a much better idea. But not really having a clear picture of that, it's impactful. I mean, I know the team he's their captain. He helped them win the Stanley Cup. They absolutely love this guy, and they want to support him in every way they can. So they're going to give him all the time he needs and hope that he can come back, which is great that they're being so good with him that way and what have you. But it does make it very, very complicated to navigate the salary cap and to put together a roster that can compete and win every night. So we'll see. From a cap perspective going into the summer here, they've got $16.2 million, but they've only got 12 contracts signed. They have a lot of expiring deals. So on a 23-man roster, that's potentially as many as 10 or 11 more skaters or players that need contracts. So some of these guys are obviously on either restricted or unrestricted free agents. So let's take a look at who those players are. The RFA list is real short and simple, just Casey Middlestat. Obviously, Middlestat will have arbitration rights now, so they hope to get that done. Obviously, he's a player they gave up a good value for with Byram, and I think he fit in well with how he played. They definitely want to get a new contract in place for Middlestat. He's definitely going to be looking for a raise, and clearly will be a player that probably wants a bit of term here. here. So they'll do everything they can to get that done for sure. On the UFA list, we've got Jonathan Drouin, who was a real nice find. Obviously, former junior teammates of Nathan MacKinnon. MacKinnon certainly played a role in helping him get there. I know with his agent Alan Walsh has said that it was a great fit, and that if they can work together and be creative, they'll figure out getting something done. It sounds like the team wants to keep Drouin. Drouin would probably love the return, had a good season, and it's going to be not easy given the cap situation they're in. But like Walsh said, when you get creative people working together for a common goal, they'll hopefully figure it out. So there is hope that Drouin returns. They've also got Andrew Cogliano, Brandon Duhaime, Kiviranta, Jakob Trenin, Jack Johnson, Caleb Jones, and Sean Walker are all unrestricted free agents here to be in the not too distant future. Hard to say if many of those guys can return. I know Jack Johnson hopes to return. I know based at the end of the year, he said he'd like to re-sign and stay. But most of the other guys, maybe Jones gets re-signed, maybe. I'm not even sure about that, to be honest. But Cogliano, I know, is a very well-respected player within the group of guys they have there with the new organization. So I fully suspect they'll try to extend him, assuming he's going to continue playing. I mean, he's old enough that he could retire, but it's not a given that he will either. So we'll see. I don't think Walker stays. I don't think Trenton or Kiviranta stay. And I would say Duhaime, Jones, probably like iffy, at best. But they certainly are only going to probably keep a few of those players. So they're going to be looking for, a handful of guys between free agency, trade, and internal promotions for some of their youngsters that they hopefully can step in. Of course, at the 2024 NHL Draft, they've got 7 picks, including their first rounder, which is 24th overall. So again, a team that, like the Avalanche, that have a complicated salary cap situation. Wouldn't be shocking if they move that first round pick to try to bring in, some kind of a good value here of a player that can fit in their organization. They're going to be looking for players, like I said, via trade and free agency. So we'll see what they do with the draft. If not, they can still get a decent prospect for down the road. Top questions facing this franchise and it's going to be tough to answer this, is Nichushkin and Landeskog going to be able to play next year? And how does it impact their cap situation? Well, it ties up money that they can't go spend. I mean, Nichushkin is basically suspended until like November sometime. And even then, they're probably going to take him back, I suspect. And if he's staying on the straight and narrow and gets through the program and gets cleared to play when he's hoping to, then I would suspect that they probably will proceed with him going back on the roster. But I mean, I know it's also very much possible that before he's cleared, like while they're getting close to that maybe they work on moving him out and trying to find a fresh start, new home for him. I don't know. They'd rather have him be on their team and be productive. He's been a huge part of their success and helping them win the Stanley Cup. But I think their patience might be running thin for, can they count on him and the accountability piece to be there when they need him most. So it's a couple of years in a row that he's abruptly had to leave the team during the playoffs, and that's just a massive blow. So we'll see. Obviously, those two guys, we know Landeskog is trying everything he can to come back, and they won't know the answer to that until they get to training camp. And then if the answer is still not ready, then he's going to continue. That $7 million that he's earning is going to be tied up for sure. And when it comes to Nichushkin, like I said, there's a possibility that maybe they do look at trying to move him after his contract or after he's returned from the program. I mean, so we'll see. But those two guys are eating up a lot of space. And you can't spend the money because they're not really a long-term injury reserve. So we'll see. Will they look to make a change in goal? Will they try to upgrade on Georgiev? There's been some rumblings that the Avalanche are one of the teams exploring the goalie market. There's a lot of goalie domino effect right now. We've seen some guys already move, like Darcy Kemper moved, and we've seen Markstrom move. Lots of smoke about Ullmark in Ottawa. So the Bruins are likely moving Ullmark. Obviously, there's some other guys out there. We've heard John Gibson's name, Tristan Jarry to some extent. There's a few others too. I mean, I guess the Avalanche have to be comfortable that they can upgrade. And the other thing is that where they have such a tight cap situation, can they allocate more money to that position? Like, he's not making a ton of money. He's only making around $3.5 million. So as much as they might want to upgrade the position, they might be financially unable to do so. So we'll see. But I know they're going to check into it for sure. At the end of the day, I wouldn't be shocked if they come back with the same goalie tandem. Jonathan Drouin, can they retain his services? I think they can, but it might cost them a player. And I wouldn't be shocked if Ross Colton is shopped. I know Frank Saravalli brought that up on Daily Faceoff, that Ross Colton, as much as they like the player and he had a good season, career highs last year, he might be the same predicament as he was in Tampa and be in a situation where they just can't afford to keep him. They need cap flexibility. With his contract not being super long or super expensive, but there is a little bit of term and money there. But for a 40-plus point player, somebody who still maybe hasn't hit their ceiling, they can probably move him without too much trouble. So Ross Colton's a player that could be a cap casualty. So we'll see about that. But they can obviously try to find, if they can find with what they have for money, it's going to be tricky. But another top six forward and some more depth on defense would be helpful. And if they bring back Jack Johnson, that'll help. Obviously, I mean, he's been comfortable there. And then they have some internal options too. But they may not have to do a lot of D, but obviously, if Johnson returns, maybe one more, a veteran for depth, and then up front, like I said, you're looking for a few options. They do have a few other newer, younger players who can probably step into some of those roles, but it's going to be tough for them. It really will be. So at the end of the day, can the Avalanche really be a stronger, better team come training camp? They're going to be doing good to be the same team that, as close as we can to this team, by keeping Drouin, by maybe keeping a few other pieces here, getting Middlestat signed. But Middlestat wasn't there the whole year, so obviously if they have to move Colton, they kind of will impact your middle six, but Middlestat can step in there. Obviously with Middlestat coming over, that pushes him down the lineup anyway. So we'll see, but the Avalanche have their work cut out for them. They're going to have to be very creative. Chris McFarland, Joe Sakic, going to be super creative. They have some big contract extensions coming up here as well that could be a big impact this summer. So we'll see what happens. But the Avalanche, one of the most complex situations because of Nichushkin and Landeskog. But I fully suspect, again, they can have, even without both those guys playing, with some tweaking here, they can be a playoff team for sure. They just need to get to the playoffs and then figure out making their additions at the deadline that their cap situation will allow them to do that, hopefully. And then once you're in, anything can happen. So let me know your thoughts on the Avalanche and their expectations for their moves this offseason down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.